that Honorable Duale is referring to at the Capital Markets Authority. We did invite them. We invited Honorable Duale as well. We have a response to that statement. So I believe perhaps tomorrow we can give that response to the statement and what the committee feels moving forward. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. Can be listened tomorrow. Next and last request is by the Honorable Alfred Keter.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 442C, I rise to request for a statement from the Chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Education and Research regarding challenges occasioned by the ministerial policy on 100% transition in the country. Honorable Speaker, the government's plan to roll out 100% transition policy to complement free day secondary school, primary to secondary transition rates have increased from 83.3% in 2018 to 95% to date, hence posing infrastructural challenges in most schools in the country. This therefore stipulates that the ministry needs to put in place additional infrastructure in order to accommodate the changes occasioned by the transition. For instance, putting up additional classrooms, libraries, laboratories, ablution blocks, and dining halls, to mention but a few. As it is now, most schools have been forced to seek for other alternatives, for instance, converting libraries, dining halls, and other available spaces as classrooms, thereby overstretching other amenities such as dormitories, laboratories, and washrooms. Honorable Speaker, there is in many schools where we were expecting to have 40 students, it has been overstretched to accommodate or were forced to admit more than 120, which is triple the number. Honorable Speaker, students need conducive learning environment in order to excel in their academics and extracurricular activities. The government ought to have done proper planning before rolling out the said policy to ensure smooth transition of students from Form 1 to secondary schools. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I seek a statement from the Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Education and Research on the following. Number one, what measures has the ministry put in place to ensure smooth transition to secondary schools? Could the Chairperson explain what plans are there to ensure quality learning and safety of our students? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I see the Honorable Sotsi want to, his hand is up.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, I want to congratulate my friend, Honorable Kitere, for bringing up this matter. The issue of congestion in school, Mr. Speaker, is a serious issue. I am a parent in one of the national schools. The other day, I was taking my daughter to school. And it is a pathetic situation, Mr. Speaker. Yes, we support the 100% transition policy. It's a very progressive policy. But then the government is not making serious efforts to ensure that we have adequate school infrastructure to accommodate the students arising from the 100% policy. Mr. Speaker, while all this is happening, I have information that the World Bank availed up to 175.5 million euros for the purpose of improving school infrastructure. And up to now, that program has not been implemented because the process of procurement was done, awards were issued to the contractors by December 2020. To date, the project has not started because the PS has stopped the program and the CS. Mr. Speaker, this is a serious matter, and I will be bringing a substantive question to this House to ask why the Ministry of Education has not taken advantage of the World Bank offer for the school improvement so that students in 30 counties with the lowest poverty levels can benefit from improved infrastructure. So what Honorable Ketere has raised is very important, and I want to ask the Education Committee to take this matter seriously, because our children are suffering. Some of them are even sleeping on the floor. There are no beds. Mr. Speaker, I therefore support the request for statement by Honorable Ketere and ask the Committee of Education to take this matter seriously, and I will be bringing a substantive question on this matter I've raised, or World Bank offer to fund the school infrastructure program to the tune of 175.5 million euros, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Chepalungu, you want to comment on the same?
Yes. Yes, Speaker. There is an alarming congestion crisis with Form 1s across the country. The transition of 100% is quite welcome, but it should also have transition in terms of money. Money should follow the huge number of students who are being enrolled in secondary schools. Every year, statistics shows that there is an increase of 8 to 10% per year. That is the population of students. Currently, the shortage of 400,000 students across Kenya. Those are students who don't have where to sit in classrooms. They don't have where to sleep in dormitories. And you find most of the schools, they have improvised tents. Some are using dormitory as classrooms. Some are using dining halls as classrooms. Some are using laboratories as classrooms. And some are using trees. They are sitting under the trees to act as classrooms. 2019, Honorable Speaker, we had a population of about 960,000. Those who are joining Form 1. And 2020, this year, we had a population which stands at around 1.1 million. So the CDF alone, which is around 60 million in terms of the development, cannot do anything in terms of infrastructure. I remember last year, His Excellency the President had allocated more than, so I stand to support Honorable Ketere for bringing this statement, which requires urgent attention, because this country is known with education, and we want to impart knowledge to our children to build this nation. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Well, I've seen a lot of interest also. Honorable Florence Mutua, just stay put, listen. Let me allow members to make their interventions, but be brief, honorable members. But just want, because this matter is very serious. It's a very serious matter, and I think it's fair that we get a few more members commenting before Honorable Mutua. Before you tell us when it is you're going to give a response. Member for Funyula.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The issue of congestion in secondary schools, particularly, Honorable Speaker, is alarming. And some of us are victims of our own success. Honorable Speaker, with the improved disbursement of bursary from CDF, many boys and girls are flocking schools, those who would not have gone to school at all. Honorable Speaker, in my constituency, Funyula, we have achieved little around 99% transition rate since I became an MP. As we stand here, I have one school, neighboring school, because it has been doing well, because kids have been remaining in school because of bursary, has got 600 who are reporting in Form 1. Yet there is a two-streamed school. Honorable Speaker, as I stand here, sometimes I'm unable to concentrate because the pressure I have is too much. Honorable Speaker, as I'm sitting here, I have received WhatsApp texts. A school that has got one classroom for Form 1, they have received 80. And out of those 80, about 70 of them want to board. Yet there are no boarding facilities. Yet, Honorable Speaker, each year, there's a lot of infrastructure fund in the ministry. We wonder what's the criteria does the ministry use to distribute these funds and these projects to various schools? Is it a principle of some constituencies, or is it that members of private education committee group everything and leave the other members with nothing? It's a matter the nation, the country must have a sober discussion so that we resolve this matter. There is equitable share of these infrastructure funds to supplement the CDF money. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Sankok.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, I want to support Honorable Keter because this is a very important matter. And Honorable Speaker, just from your chair, you had said, why don't we just do the sum total of how much is required for us to achieve that 100% transition and to have all students being comfortable in schools, either in primary and secondary, Honorable Speaker. And I think it is this House that allocate funds, Honorable Speaker. But Honorable Speaker, when we have funds from World Bank, and World Bank project, as Honorable Sosia said, being stopped, it's because probably the PS and the CS needed kickbacks, Honorable Speaker, and they did not get, Honorable Speaker, because we don't know why they stopped such a noble idea, yet our students are suffering, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I'm talking from a point of no, because I have, Honorable Speaker, six children, my own children, biological children, Honorable Speaker, in various public schools, Honorable Speaker, because I don't take my children to private schools, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, and the congestion level in those schools, Honorable Speaker, is alarming. And I think we can go further as a House, Honorable Speaker, and have policies that all leaders in government, in executive, in the judiciary, in the parliament, should have their kids in public schools, because that is the only time that all government resources will be used to improve our public sector, Honorable Speaker. We should also, as Dr. Nyikala said, that we should force our officials, government state officers, from parliament, from judiciary, from executive, Honorable Speaker, to use public hospitals, Honorable Speaker. Why should we have an insurance, a health insurance scheme for private hospital, yet we have public hospital, Honorable Speaker? There is no way we can improve what we don't use. So I urge even members of this House, Honorable Speaker, if we want to improve the education system in our country, let us start by leading with examples, Honorable Speaker, by having all our kids in public schools, Honorable Speaker, from primary all the way to the university, Honorable Speaker, and we will be able to channel a lot of resources to public institutions. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I support.
Honorable Soipan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a chance to add my voice to this very important issue raised by the Honorable Keter. Honorable Speaker, the policy on 100% transition is very important, because without this policy, we would be asking ourselves, for the children who are not able to transition from primary school to secondary school, where do they go? And what is the reason as to why they are not transitioning to secondary schools? But of utmost importance, Honorable Speaker, is also to know, as we implement this policy, where are these children going to in the schools? Yesterday, I was having a chat with a principal of a secondary school in Narok, the best performing school in Narok, Naikara Secondary School in Narok West. And he was telling me that the practical capacity of the school is 300 students. But those posted to the school are 450. And you ask yourself, Mr. Speaker, where are these children going to? It's a health hazard. We are in the midst of a pandemic, corona. We are talking about social distancing, and even hygienically, and lumping kids together almost in double numbers to what the infrastructure in the schools can hold is a crisis, Honorable Speaker. And we need to ask ourselves, are we implementing a policy because when I was talking to the principal, I said this is the best performing school in Narok. It adds to, you know, watering down the value or the quality of teaching, and in the net effect of which would even bring down the performance of these schools. Because those classrooms are going to be too big, and we are not having other teachers, more teachers posted to the schools. We don't have enough classrooms. Mr. Speaker, it's going to you know, reverse the gains that we otherwise are gaining in the education sector in our counties. And we should ask ourselves, Mr. Speaker, are we implementing a policy at the expense of turning our schools into conveyor belts, so that we just say that our children have gone through secondary schools for the sake of it as a formality, yet the quality of the education will get compromised, and even the health of our children is compromised? Mr. Speaker, this is an issue that we need to have looked at. You know, that the ministry should go to the bottom of it at the earliest possible time, so that we can have our children transiting, but not at the expense of the quality of education for our children. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Diwa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just met my head teachers, 52 of them. I have 204 schools, 152 primary schools, and 52 high schools. The Speaker, is not just a transition from primary school to high school. It's also a transition from village kids who are not going to school to primary school. So we have classrooms which were 2 or 3 doubling with no teachers, and pupil-teacher ratio going from 40-50 to 60-70. This is how bad it is. And that is also working out the teachers. So, as the honorable members say, the teaching is compromised. The idea is a noble idea, but the implementation and the expected outcome is not going to reflect what we anticipated. So we are asking ourselves then, how can funds follow policies? And the ministry are quiet about this. They're not coming to even as for me, we have a platform in our WhatsApp where I get all the cries of these teachers. It is overwhelming, and something has to be done, honestly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Whip.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also want to join my colleagues into this statement by the Honorable Keter. But I want to seek that the Chair Committee on Education, whereas he'll be following up on the issues raised by the Honorable Keter, there are 2 other issues, Honorable Speaker, which I would want maybe to enjoin. For example, these are, Honorable Speaker, 1, whereas the student ratio has gone up, the ministry has come up with a new policy of banning registration of new schools, which is completely the inverse, because every primary schools must gang up or combine to make up into a secondary school. Once you now ban the registration of new schools, definitely that's an awkward policy which cannot deliver to the population that we have. Second, Honorable Speaker, I would want maybe the Chair also to look into the issue Honorable Wino has raised before me, the issue of teachers to student ratio. Why should we transit more students into a classroom and there are no instructors to give knowledge to the students? That is very key, Honorable Speaker, that let the Chair look into in terms of the infrastructure to support the number of students who would have been recruited. And finally, Honorable Speaker, just to reiterate what Honorable Osotsi said, the issue of school SECIP as a program, let the government now move with speed and implement. Honorable Speaker, this is it's on phase 2. Phase 1 was fully implemented. Phase 2 is now facing challenges a year later, and yet it's supposed to roll into the 3rd phase. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, once those 2, 3 are combined, I feel we'll have a sufficient answer from the Chair on Education. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Member Ponyando.
Honorable Speaker, I thank you very much. I had also intended to raise certain issues that draw their nexus from what we are discussing now. Honorable Speaker,
even though in law they would say costs follow events, in counties they would say money follow functions. The government came up with an idea of 100% transition and cleverly passed over that burden on the shoulders of members of parliament without any additional funding. So that is the quagmire we are in today. And any time there is a shortage of infrastructure within schools, or there is lack of school fees somewhere, it is the member of parliament who is blamed for this kind of scarcity. Honorable Speaker, that is the kind of situation we are confronted with. I have 155 schools within Nyando constituency. Half of the money that we get goes towards bursaries, leaving so paltry amount of money that cannot even erect a classroom across the constituency. So I do not know whether this House has the latitude to enhance the CDF funding or even put its feet on the ground to ask additional funding for infrastructure development within our schools. Honorable Speaker, another matter that I'd wanted to raise, and this is an opportune time, since Monday, with the reporting of Form 1 students in schools, we have had, personally I've received lots of phone calls asking why, even though the calling letter annexed with itself fee structure, when students report in schools, they realize there are so many hidden charges that were not hitherto put clear. And at that point when children are being admitted, they have to pay these sums of monies, Honorable Speaker. So even as the Committee on Education is retreating to get into the bottom of these issues, we also need to know why these hidden charges are passed over to our parents, and yet there are issues that were not raised earlier. Number two, Honorable Speaker, it has become a new normal that mattresses, together with boxes, bed sheets, and other requirements, are not to be bought by parents, but they have to pay for them in schools. So they pay over 300% over and above the prevailing market price. But they have no choice. That is what they have been forced to do. So we have received lots and lots of inquiries from these parents as to what should happen now that they are in this kind of state, Honorable Speaker. Finally, Honorable Speaker, this is a matter that would be transcending across constituencies. Traditionally, NGCDF board would be asking us for budget proposals from the month of November, December, so that any funding begins from the month of April or sometimes June, heading into another round of a financial year, Honorable Speaker. We are staring at an electoral period next year, and therefore, I even doubt whether we shall have requisite quorum when we report back here in February, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, I was seeking your direction, even though I have done it informally, and we are privileged to have the CDF committee chair with us here, the party leader for Ford Kenya, that a pronouncement should be made that let us go ahead and present our budget proposals immediately, and this matter should head to Treasury so that funding also begins immediately, so that by December we are done with Treasury and we are getting into another new round of election, having supported all the projects we had in mind for the 5 years. Honorable Speaker, we did not sign for 4 years to be members of parliament, and we hence did not sign for 4 years to carry out projects on the ground. So this is something that we will seek your indulgence, Honorable Speaker. Give a directive. My proposals are ready. I can present them as soon as tomorrow morning, so that funding from Treasury should follow immediately. Otherwise, Honorable Speaker, whereas I will be back with you in this House in September 2022, some of us here, oh, you will be president, sorry, I was forgetting. They're saying you will be president. I wish you well, Honorable Speaker. Though you have to contend with the Prime Minister, Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. Anyway, what I'm saying is, we may end up going into another round of election with our projects not funded, and therefore you have somebody new, pretty new, taking over from your vision that they do not properly understand. So, Honorable Speaker, if you make a pronouncement now, we can work on our project proposals sooner than possible, and funding should begin. And we are praying, Honorable Speaker, that by December, let Treasury be done with us, and we start a new year on a new slate. And this does not only include NGCDF, no, it should also include the National Government Action, Affirmative Action Fund, NGAF, because it is also an integral part of development there on the ground. And our sisters are here with us and therefore need our support. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Now, now I can see the member for Endebess wanted to make the comments brief.
Thank you,
I'm
Honorable
sure the
Speaker.
Honorable Florence Mutua has taken too many notes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to support this petition by Honorable Alfred Keter, member for Nandi Hills. Honorable Speaker, what we demand is transparency, especially on the ministry's budget for supporting schools' infrastructure. Because what happens is that many of members do not understand even how much has been released to which school within his constituency, and whether every school in the Republic of Kenya, in every constituency, is supported, and whether that money is distributed fairly. I think it will be important that the chair make sure that the ministry can even give us a table how much it is being awarded to schools, even in Endebess or in any other constituency. It will be of interest to the members to see that tabling, that in such and such a school, they got this amount. Honorable Speaker, I just want to also support the sentiments by Honorable Jared Okello, that our chair of CDF here, who happens to be my neighbor and the leader for Ford Kenya, we want you to table to us, you should have by now tabled how much each constituency is given for this financial year, so that we can now work on our proposals and make sure that these proposals are submitted. That is what our funds managers are waiting. So, Honorable Amunyinyi, please, with your committee, table those estimates so that we can be able to act on them. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, the biggest challenge is the issue about registration of schools. Registration of new schools, secondary schools, or even primary schools, it should not be a favor. The ministry should stop freezing on registration of those schools, because it forces members to seek for this registration of these schools as if it is a favor. It is not a favor to us, but we feel that there are areas where a need has arisen for registration of a new school. You find that you have built a school. For instance, in my constituency, I have built 3 new primary schools and 3 new secondary schools. But as we speak today, we have pupils in those schools, Chepkirot, we have others in Chepkirot, Lutaso, Chepchoina, Kietke, and many other schools within those areas. As we speak today, some of those schools do not have teachers from TSC, yet there are pupils who are learning there. How do we expect those pupils to compete effectively with other pupils who are in Alliance High School or Stare Boys or any other national school? So I think it's important that these matters are taken very seriously, that when we are transiting to 100%, then we should be able to create infrastructure. And if we've created those infrastructure, these schools be registered by the ministry so that pupils can be able to learn properly and have the necessary teachers to be able to guide them. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Member for Emuhai.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. I'll be very brief. That I support this statement so sought by Honorable Keter, that the 100% was a matter of actualizing what was in law, that the basic education is now compulsory. And then the definition of basic education was going up to Form 4. So we support 100% transition because it's so good. But then the 100% transition must be followed by funding. Unfortunately, Honorable Speaker, something that the honorable members have accepted, and one member seemed to allude to, is that now we are accepting fully that it's CDF to build infrastructure in schools. And we are not putting pressure on the national government to actually do the infrastructural development in our schools. And we are just taking that burden continuously without complaining. Actually, CDF contribution to infrastructure in schools should be very small. In fact, the opposite of what I saw here should happen. CDF should supplement, not government supplementing infrastructure in schools. Honorable Speaker, this is worsening, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. Because as the Honorable Keter talks about the situation now, in the next 2 years, there's a bombshell coming. And this is when the children who are in so-called grade 5 are going to transit in their junior secondary. And that is in 2 years. Just at the brim of 2023, if this is not taken care of, also the students who are in class 6 will have done their 8 and will be actually transiting in Form 1. We shall have a double intake of Form 1s in the next 2 years. And if we don't do infrastructure in schools using serious budgeting by this particular house, that will be a complete disaster, because there will be no place where these students will be. In fact, there's nobody, including the minister, who is ready and who can explain to Kenyans how those 2 classes will be accommodated in our schools. Some people are thinking that some primaries will become secondaries. Others are not even aware what will happen. So this is a very serious issue. The earlier it is intervened with, the better. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Member for Baringo Central.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I am also in support of statement by Honorable Keter. I think looking at what members have contributed, I am of the opinion the Ministry of Education is playing with Kenyans. And they are concentrating on very minor issues, like, for example, saying communities should not use buses. At the same time, they are introducing rules which are very bad for even teacher training colleges. Another issue again, they are coming with reducing examination centers. I don't know, I think the chair and the committee of education should come strongly about the minister and his permanent secretary. These guys are trying to mess the education system in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I am one of the people who are actually supporting education at all, with all means. I am supporting even with my friends from abroad. But when we look at what the ministry is doing, Mr. Speaker, somebody like Joshua Chebiogon Kandie, sometimes I am very annoyed. I can even, when I meet that minister, I will knock him. I will give him a blow. Because this one, I'm a very good person. But when it comes to messing a human being, I am totally very bad person. Because our education system, if we continue this way, we'll end up having a lot of children outside there with no good education. And I want the chair of education. There are a lot of questions. I have even my question, which has not been answered by the minister. And this one I am waiting when the minister will come from UK. I want to meet him face to face. Yeah. So that I tell him the truth. Because sometimes we
But you say, but you threaten to injure him.
No, Mr. Speaker, our Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, Our Kenyans think that when you have a professor, you are a professor, you know everything. I want to tell the seers, please calm down and listen to the educationists, from the teachers, everybody, from even members of parliament. And even the other time when Honorable Meli was the chair of education, I requested him, the budget which was going to the ministry should be taken to CDF. We would be having very little problems now, Mr. Speaker. But they took it to the Ministry of Education. We don't know that the money went to which school. I don't know even in my school, in my constituency. But the CDF we get every year. I want to assure my fellow colleagues, if you come to Baringo Central, my people are singing. They are saying CDF does come at the right time. And if we enhance CDF, I think we will go far in terms of infrastructure in schools. With the few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I say thank you. Yeah.
Honorable Munyenyi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the petition by Honorable Alfred Keter that is sought from the Ministry of Education actually affects all of us, Mr. Speaker. And like colleagues, I strongly support the same. Mr. Speaker, let me start by giving a bit of information. With your permission, at the beginning of the year, a meeting was held between my committee of CDF and that of the Departmental Committee of Education. This was a joint sitting. Mr. Speaker, this was a joint sitting which you permitted us to hold on the 17th of February. And I wish these members could... Mr. Speaker, and I thought it was important members got this because it affects all of us. With your permission, I was saying, at the beginning of the year, Mr. Speaker, we held a joint sitting between the CDF committee and that of education. This was after the Treasury released 5.7 billion to the Ministry of Education towards enhancing infrastructure in our schools in the country. This was one of the requirements to comply with a protocol that had been set by the Ministry of Health, Mr. Speaker. So in an effort to harmonize so that whatever CDF is going to contribute and what the Ministry of Education is going to contribute to schools is known and that there is no duplication or confusion about the funding, Mr. Speaker. So my committee and that of Florence held a joint session, and we agreed that the Ministry of Education should disclose the criteria that they're going to use for the development of schools, for construction of classrooms in schools in the country, Mr. Speaker, with the 5.7 billion. We had initially proposed that the money should be released through CDF so that it goes to constituencies whose leaders know the areas where there are problems and which needed to be expanded, Mr. Speaker. But the ministry was not willing to release the money to go through CDF. So we agreed with the Departmental Committee on Education to pursue the same with the ministry so that a criteria is given on how the funds are going to be given, the schools that are going to benefit, and the amounts that will be given to those schools. Mr. Speaker, and I think my colleague, Honorable Florence, will be in a better position to respond towards that. But 5.7 billion, which was released at the beginning of the year, would have done a big job towards creating more space in our schools, Mr. Speaker. Now, all this, Mr. Speaker, also alongside the CDF, we have funds that have been allocated through CDF. Now, it is clear that CDF, anyone will tell. You'll find out how much has been spent in every school and clear it towards whatever project. So we do not have a problem with CDF, but the issue of raising funds so that we meet the requirement to ensure 100% transition in our schools also as a contribution from CDF. It is the House here, Mr. Speaker, that does appropriation. It's a House that working with the Treasury that passes the budget. And it's in fact this that has caused delay. We are still working on the issue of sealing with the board and the Ministry of Finance, the Department of Planning at the Treasury, so that we come up with a clear. We were seeking a slight increase because what had been given was the 137 that we had last year. So what we have been asking is to have this amount increased a little from within the budget that has been given to the board. But I can advise members, Mr. Speaker, to work on the proposals. Don't wait. Maybe I would probably request you to allow me to do this next week, Mr. Speaker, but members should not wait for this because it is roughly around what we received last financial year. That should have been 137 million. So I urge colleagues, members, please work on the proposals so that we are able to get funding as soon as possible when your inquiries have been cleared from your constituencies. I said I'll table this next week, but I can confirm that the amount which had been given was 137 million. We are trying to negotiate to see if this can be enhanced a bit. If it fails by next week, I'll be tabling the ceiling, Mr. Speaker. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I said you do the letters of proposals and submit them to the board.
Honorable Meli, be brief now, because we now must, I'm sure the chair now has had so many points raised by you that yes, and the chair is the one to give us the way forward. Honorable Meli.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also rise to support the petition. And Honorable Speaker, members have actually contributed to this. And one of the issues I want to really put across, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of financing and making sure that 100% transition is a success. 100% transition, Honorable Speaker, as an education is actually, we say it's better to have a child in school than outside the school. But in this situation, you'll realize that as we speak today, the population in schools, Form 1, is about 1 million. And it is in normal trends, Honorable Speaker, you'll realize that the student population in Form 1 increases by between 8 to 10% every year. Meaning that even if we build enough classes this year, next year we need 8% or 10% of new classes. Meaning that if the ministry is supposed to ensure that, one, we have 8% increase of teachers in schools, so that we'll also have enough space. As much as we are crowding, Honorable Ketere has just put it very clearly. If you come to account it, the top schools, like Kapsabet Boys, Kapsabet Girls, Meteitei, Samoa and others, have 3 extra classes this year. Last year they had 6 Form 1 classes. This year they are having 9. And the teachers are constant. And the dining halls have been converted into classrooms. The libraries have been converted into classrooms, meaning that the teaching learning process itself is not effective. So that you realize, Honorable Speaker, the ministry needs to move fast. One, ensure that the funds are actually dispersed to these schools on time. 2, we have the SEQI program. There was a SEQI program where it was actually to be implemented in 30 counties and 110 constituencies that were actually of low income. But that program has actually stalled in the ministry. That would have ensured that enough schools, enough classrooms, about 2,000 classrooms would have been built by the World Bank. About 500 laboratories would have also been constructed. That would have eased this problem. On top of that, we have a very pertinent issue of CDF. CDF plays a critical role. The delay in disbursement of CDF
means that there'll be a delay in the construction of classrooms, and meaning that a number of students are actually going to study under trees, and this is a very cold season. A number of them will contract pneumonia, and this is a very bad time also, Honorable Speaker. You know that this is a new normal. We will not be able to have space, and that's why we are talking about spacing in schools. So it is a very urgent thing, and I want members in this House to know that the issue that has been brought before us is actually very urgent. It is an emergency, and we need to take it with a lot of, and I want the Ministry and the Committee of Education to take it with the necessary urgency that it deserves. So, Honorable Speaker, lastly, I also want to point out that even the teaching service, as much as they have been employing teachers almost every year, 5,000, that is actually paltry, because it's not enough. You'll realize that even if the students are increasing by 100,000 every year in secondary schools, the teachers that we are employing are not enough. They will not even be, we have not reached 60% of what is required in those schools. So this petition is very important, and I want to urge the Chair Education Committee and the PS and the CS to ensure that this is actually addressed very urgently. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Duor.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I would also like to support the request for statement by the Honorable Kater. Honorable Speaker, particularly because we can see that the 100% transition policy, as all policies, was an effort to come up with not just regulation, but also an administrative action. Honorable Speaker, I just wanted, as I say this, to indeed understand that as members of Parliament, we are frustrated because it is our role, Honorable Speaker, to exercise oversight. But Honorable Speaker, allow me to humbly say, not just as someone who by training is an educationist, because I do know how the Honorable Kadie was rather frustrated by the professor, that indeed as we seek to look for 100% transition, may we, Honorable Speaker, not encourage a culture that is beginning to take root in our country, where we ridicule people for taking the very education that, Honorable Speaker, we are now including and ensuring that we get 100% transition of. Honorable Speaker, I have sat here this afternoon, and I believe, Honorable Speaker, that education is not just how we go to school, Honorable Speaker, and the transition that we get, but as the Honorable Meli has indicated, it is holistic, and this is why we want all of our children to be there. I therefore, as I support this request for statement, Honorable Speaker, would also like to remind us as honorable members that we do have a responsibility indeed to look at the policy, and Honorable Speaker, the matters that we are raising here require that we, even as we deal with issues of budget, we need to be asking ourselves that there is room to have a dialogue, have a conversation, and to, in a way, respectfully keep to the focus and indeed see that we can progressively, given the challenges that we have. I conclude, Honorable Speaker, by indicating that when we see that a project such as the one that by World Bank is indeed put on hold, I can confirm, Honorable Speaker, that it is easy when you sit from out to point fingers at the CS and the PS, but I am very happy that the parliamentary system is going to allow us to hear that our country is increasingly developing ways by which we get all kinds of shortcuts as we embark on activities to indeed allow that the ministry gets back to us and to ensure, Honorable Speaker, that we encourage all of our children to go to school. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Member for Seme.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what we are seeing is a transition, and some of that may know a little history. That actually happened in this country in 1962, when you had primary schools going up to standard 4, and then intermediate schools that were very few going up to standard 8. And then there was a common entrance exam. And so kids had to go standard 4 common entrance and then only those who passed proceeded to intermediate school. When this was moved, it was similar to 100 transition. What eventually happened, and this is what we may look at, is that eventually all the primary schools will actually proceed from standard 1 all the way to standard 4. Because if you look at it, Mr. Speaker, we need as many Form 1 classrooms as there are standard 8 classrooms every year. So that is actually the direction to go. And if we do that, Mr. Speaker, the other thing that will happen, most people will choose actually to go to day schools. And day schools are much cheaper. Parents are dying from the cost of boarding schools. One child in a poor household takes all the resources when they get into a boarding school. So I think as we look at this policy, we must look at, we can then have all schools moving gradually to Form 4 and most schools becoming day schools, and will reduce the cost of education. I think that is something that we should look in a proper progression of this policy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very briefly, also, member for Mathare.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and I support all that my colleagues before me have said. I just wanted to tie one small point. Honorable Speaker, the one point that we must not lose, and I support the petition the request for the statement by Honorable Keter, is that the point has been made, and I think Honorable Jared Okello it is who said that there is the question of how we deal with delayed disbursements of funds for CDF. Because the truth of the matter is that CDF is what has taken 80 to 90% of the infrastructure that we see in our schools. Now, there is a practice, and I've been here, seen it now for 3 years that I've been here, that towards the tail end of a financial year, the government will withhold funding or disbursements of funds to counties. I am also informed reliably that towards the tail end of our term in Parliament, there is a practice to withhold monies that are supposed to go to CDF. So I would encourage Honorable Jared Okello to not only hope that the statement will come from the Chair Wamunyinyi, but to request for a specific statement on how this issue will be dealt with. Because what is the rationale or justification to slow down the disbursements of monies for CDF because we are going to an election? We know that there are CSs who are getting ready to come and run for our seats. We know that there are PSs who are getting ready and other people in government. Their monies and their programs are not being slowed down. And we are the people under Article 95 who do disbursements of funds. How do we do disbursement for funds for other government agencies when the very things that we ought to implement and oversight through CDF, money is slowed down at the tail end of the financial year? Last point that I wanted to make very briefly is that even as we look at this request for statement on 100% transition, this issue of how infrastructure money is spent has been said now here, time without number. And I would encourage that beyond the request for this statement, Honorable Koter, we should consider a select committee to do a special audit on the monies that we have given to infrastructure funding for the last 4 years. And at the tail end of that select committee inquiry, we should say that henceforth in the budget that is coming, or that we have already passed, that we make sure that infrastructure money is money given as conditional funds to CDF to implement. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Well, I know that very many of you have made a request, but now you will allow me to bring this to a close, but not before I hear the member for Suba North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, of course, I support the appeal by the Honorable Member Keter, and I want to agree with all the members on what they say. Only thing that I want to emphasize, Mr. Speaker, to the NGCDF chair, Mr. Speaker, is that if for those of us who have actually been dealing with the cases up country or in our constituencies, we have a crisis because of the change in school calendar. That we have a lot of people that are having a crisis because you gave a bursary, and then now there's an overlap with another term. And Mr. Speaker, that therefore means that we must deal in an extraordinary manner the way the government is also dealing in an extraordinary manner. And so instead of encouraging us to do our proposals, just indicate that by the end of this month, proposals shall be in, because we are dealing with the timelines. We cannot be dealing with suppositions when we know the budget has passed. This is the time when the budget must be passed way ahead of time, and money must be dispersed way ahead of time. And Mr. Speaker, I also want to incite members that if that is not done, we must also hold other people hostage in terms of the work that is being done here. Because we cannot be passing other people's work when ours is being sabotaged. So we want to put the chairman on notice that if we do not do that, by the end of this month, the office should be calling us to give proposals. And by September, all the money for constituencies should be in our account. Because we only have a short time before CDF, Secretariat, such their technical slackening. They will not tell you they've stopped, but they just will not disperse any funds. So we need that to happen when members are still coming. Otherwise, us, we will also not pass things. Thank you, Speaker.
Now, member for Wajir East.
Thank you, and I'm really glad that the time you have given members of Parliament to articulate on this matter, because I can see, Honorable Speaker, you seem to understand the issues that are really affecting members of Parliament, and that's why we support you in your endeavor to become the leader, the CEO of this country to the future. So thank you very much for giving us this time and ample time you have given, and the fact that you also come in from a rural areas like where we come from, and you know education is quite important in our regions. So thank you very much. Honorable Speaker, there are certain issues that need to be understood which are very unique to us, particularly for those of us who support education and feel education as an equalizer in terms of improving the social standards of our people. This region where we come from in northern Kenya, we have been affected by a number of challenges, particularly in terms of education. The issue is the 100% transition, which has earlier been mooted by this country without commensurate support in terms of infrastructure development for schools, such that we have schools with one classroom that is going to get about 50, 60 classes, students in only one class. So that has been a challenge to us. So we suggest that the government, as much as they really want to, in 100% transition, there should be a commensurate support in terms of infrastructure development for schools so that we have 100% transition and every child can be able to access a classroom. The other challenges we have had is the issues of school feeding. The background is that the schools and these children are coming from a very poor background such that they cannot even afford a meal. The Ministry of Education should also support infrastructure development as well as providing school feeding program which has been there in the past. You remember in those early days, His Excellency Moi has even been providing milk, but of late, even the support, leave alone the milk, which was an extra support, even the school feeding program, which was traditionally being provided in the schools and will be able to support and alleviate families, has not been coming forthright. So we will challenge those issues should also be addressed alongside with infrastructure improvement in the schools to attain the 100% transition. Because even the school feeding is equally trying to augment the 100% transition as well. As today, as we speak, yesterday I had about 5 students. Each one of them could not be able to get school fees, and they decided to go and tender for their livestock. And I had to bring them back so that I pay for their school fees to our national schools which have been there. So these are some of the challenges we have as members of parliament. Even when CDF is not available, we still go and do our charitable way of helping them. Honorable Speaker, the other challenges we have is teaching. You remember there are certain regulations that the Ministry of Education has been able to bring in on board without considering the challenges we have in terms of teacher to student ratio. What has happened is that the teachers, even the P1s, have been reduced, have been cancelled, and they have been erased P1s. We are no longer having P1s. That means those children which were able to go to a P1 because of their poor grades in KCB cannot even get the P1. We have to get a diploma and above that. So basically, these new policies which Ministry of Education has brought up in trying to erase P1s has also negated our chances of getting adequate teachers in our areas. Security has also affected such that we are not able to get and attract teachers from other parts of the country to come and teach in our schools. So these are challenges and have been a big challenges to us as members of parliament in trying to use the CDF. And the CDF has not been coming in regularly as required to augment into these processes and these policies which the government have been able to start. Honorable Speaker, as if we look at and make an audit of our disbursement of the CDF, as we speak today at the close of the financial year, we have about 26 million or 30 million shillings, which up to today has not been disbursed by the CDF headquarters. So basically, that means we are pulling into the other financial year when we still have a backlog of another CDF of about 20, 30 million shillings. So we will urge the committee and the chair of the CDF board to make sure that there's disbursement and frequent disbursement so that we can be able to meet our obligation as members of parliament and we're able to support for bursaries and for construction of schools. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity.
Finally, the member for Wajir South.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I'll be short and swift on this point as it has been discussed quite widely by my colleagues. I do find that it is very important that we raise this transition of students from primary to secondary school at 100%. I think it is one of the best things that can happen to a newer generation. And I feel that that is important, but unfortunately the infrastructure has not been in place. We expect our children or our kids to be able to be transitioning to another level of their education with sufficient amount of facilities that are available in where they're transitioning to. These facilities are not there. I'll give you a single example. In Wajir South, we have got, I have 11 secondary schools. I decided to add about 4 of them. And in these 11 secondary schools, the unfortunate thing is that they are widely dispersed. And Wajir South being one of the second largest constituencies in the country at 23,000 square kilometers, it becomes quite terrible that we are unable to provide school facilities for our children at every corner of the constituency. But one other thing that I really want to mention here is that the ministry puts forward capitation that is not sufficient enough. I mean, we are only being told about capitations that should be supporting schools. These capitations are Miagra. They are Miagra. And these are not enough to be able to even support, facilitate laboratories that can be able to equip our children to become the future scientists, people who can learn, better sciences and compete with the rest of the world. Now, you can go for transition, 100%, but do you have the next level where these children can be moving forward to? Now, other than that, when this transition, the 100% transition level reaches to Form 4, or O level, as I used to call it during our times, what really happens is that colleges and universities are not again available. Now, that is where our challenges are. Provide transitions at 100%, provide the facilities in secondary schools, and then provide facilities in universities and colleges. And if that is not going to be done, then this country is failing the future generation. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, the future generation is looking forward to seeing that legislators in this House do legislate on process where budget is increased, where not only that budget is increased, CDF is increased, that has done quite tremendous work in every corner of this country, Mr. Speaker. CDF, the amount that is being provided is not sufficient enough to support schools. So I urge that particular percentage added purposely for this transition issue. And therefore I stop by saying that this proposal is quite important and I do support. Thank you very much.
Honorable Florence, obviously you find the concerns raised by so many members, but I know you are equal to the task.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and let me take this opportunity to thank Honorable Keter for the very key statement, and all the members. I've listened to all your views and I've noted them, and indeed, infrastructure is a big problem when it comes to the education sector right now, especially with the new 100% transition, which we appreciate very much because it has ensured that we don't leave any child behind, and also the new CBC ensures that we also need a lot of new classrooms. So indeed, we need a lot of infrastructure support from the government. Let me take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to thank His Excellency the President, Uhuru Kenyatta, for his recent visit to London to attend the Global Summit, which was a very key educational meeting to ensure we increase financing for quality education. I'm sure he came back with a lot of goodies, and he will be able to inform the country at some point. Mr. Speaker, the ministry, as we all know, receives a lot of money for infrastructure. This year we have received 1.6B for infrastructure for primary, 2.7B for secondary, and out of this, 1.9B will be for desks. Mr. Speaker, let me talk quickly about what the Honorable has raised about capitation. Capitation has been going on for a while, and it is high time also the government reviewed the capitation because it started a very long time, and many things have changed, life has become more expensive. So it's imperative that also the capitation is increased so that it caters for all that is needed in the sector. Mr. Speaker, we all know that education is the only equalizer we have as a country, actually in the whole world. So it must be fully supported. There's a time, Mr. Speaker, that we had even discussed as a committee on the issue of this funding to involve directly the MPs of the area. Because, Mr. Speaker, the bills I've talked about here, the criteria that has been raised by the members of parliament, the criteria that is used to identify the schools that need funding in those constituencies has never been clear to the members. And I think that is what is coming out, that the ministry needs to give us a clear criteria how they identify the schools that need support in the various constituencies, and without involving the member of that area. That is, it makes the members not feel ownership of whatever is brought by the ministry. So it is important moving forward, and I hope that the answer will cater to that the ministry should actually work with the members of the constituencies to ensure that if there is any support going to his or her area, they are involved and they know, and the MP will confirm that actually that is the school that needs the funding more than the other one that maybe the ministry wants to support. Mr. Speaker, you remember there is a time Honorable Duale brought a question similar to what Honorable Keter has brought. It was a very detailed and well-responded to question with all the schools that were supported during that time. And I remember I even requested the members to pick the report and just confirm if what is in that report is true, and if those schools were actually the ones that were supported. And I can confirm, Mr. Speaker, that no member has ever told me that those schools that are in that report are not the ones that were supported. So it's important to look at that report, honorable members, and confirm that those schools are actually the ones that were supported during that time. Mr. Speaker, I also want to applaud the members of parliament for the good job they have done to ensure we have infrastructure. They have done very well. They have put up the necessary classrooms. So it is obvious that they will also need more support through CDF or whatever channel they use to also work to get more support to ensure that they have the necessary infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, I want to talk briefly about this SECI project. It is the Kenya Secondary Education Quality Improvement Project, Mr. Speaker, funded by the World Bank. This was to kick off last year, March 2020. It was tendered and the entire procurement process was done. Actually, this was supposed to have started taking care of the infrastructures that we're talking about because it was supposed to be completed in 6 months. Mr. Speaker, we have no idea why the project was suddenly stopped. So it is important that, as Honorable Ososi has said, is going to bring a question on the floor for the CS to appear and come and tell us why it was stopped so that we can unlock this, and we are hoping that it will be able to proceed. Because, Mr. Speaker, I can confirm that that project was to benefit 3,193 schools in 30 counties. And I quickly want to read those counties, Mr. Speaker. Bungoma County was there, Murang'a, Busia, Kakamega, Homa Bay, Migori, Kisii, West Pokot, Turkana, Elgeyo, Bomet, Nandi, Samburu, Baringo, Tharaka Nithi, Laikipia County, Machakos, Kajiado, Wajir, Mandera, Marsabit, Isiolo, Makueni County, Kitui, Tana County, Taita, Kwale, and which one is this? Kilifi County, Mr. Speaker. So this SEQUIP project, we will really, as a committee, request for the executive to allow it to proceed so that we kickstart with these infrastructures in these various counties, even as we negotiate for because this was to cover for 30 counties, even as we negotiate for the other counties to be supported, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we also, during the annual budget, we requested for more support through the budget committee to Treasury to be able to give us more teachers, which Treasury declined, and I highly believe that they do not know the pressure that we have, especially on infrastructure and having more teachers in those schools. So they declined, and we will still pursue this during the supplementary, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we get the addition of 5,000 teachers that were supposed to have been hired, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have a lot of questions and statements in the education sector, and I can assure the members we are going to have them answered on this floor. We have other roadside policies, like the issue of the bus not being used by the public, which the members have raised here, and we'll also ensure that we have some answers, concrete answers, and also the issue of non-continuation of the registration of schools. But I managed to deal with the members who had those issues and have taken their letters to the ministry to ensure that these schools are not locked out, that they are registered. Mr. Speaker, with that said, this is a very important statement. And Mr. Speaker, I'm just hoping that the answer that we're going to get now from the CS will finally lay to rest this issue of infrastructure. Let the ministry involve the members of parliament so that they feel ownership of the infrastructures that are put up in schools, and the criteria should be very clear to the members so that they can feel that truly the ministry has supported the right schools. We will need 2 weeks, Mr. Speaker, to answer that question when the CS is back, as I said. Thank you, members, and Mr. Speaker.
2 weeks, Honorable Ketel. I think that's, and it's good you raise this issue, Honorable Ketel, because it's really very pertinent.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and allow me to thank you for first even acknowledging that it is a very critical issue. And secondly, Mr. Speaker, for allowing members to interrogate on this issue. Mr. Speaker, I must admit that it was not very easy to even make a decision whether you should put it as a question, as a statement, or even to go on to request members to support on adjournment so that we discuss this issue. And Mr. Speaker, having said that, I think 2 weeks I'm fine with 2 weeks because we expect a comprehensive statement that is going to be holistic in its approach, because these issues are so many. It touches on every issue of education, from infrastructure to even teachers, even the questions which were raised by the Honorable Whip on registration of new schools. Because unless you register new schools, you will not increase the capacity in the secondary school, because the question here is about capacity, so that for you to achieve that 100% transition, which all members have supported it, and I support it, you must ensure that you have the same capacity in the secondary school that is going to absorb the entire students who did KCP. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Next order. Is that, Honorable Anga, you have a point of order?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I just wanted to note that while we were in the chamber here, two eminent Kenyans have won the 800-meter race. Emmanuel Korir has won the gold, and Ferguson Rotich the silver. So I just wanted us to acknowledge that and congratulate them for the sterling performance in Tokyo. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Oh. That is good, of course. It lifts the spirit of all Kenyans. We are getting a bit worried because I think we don't have a lot of space to swim, so we don't do very well in those those areas. That's great. That's good news. Honour members, before we proceed to the next order, I have this communication to give by way of guidance. And I wish to guide the House as follows. Before you go to consider the committee, the House proceeds the Committee of the Whole House to consider the Parliamentary Pensions Amendment number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 57 of 2019. So to make the following observations. You will recall that at the rise of the House during the afternoon sitting of Tuesday, 6th of July, 2021, the Committee of the Whole House had commenced reporting progress on its consideration of the Parliamentary Pensions Amendment number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 57 of 2019, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 134. 2, at the time, the committee had considered the bill up to new clause 13A. In this regard, and in line with the provisions Standing Order 132, providing for sequence on a bill in committee, what remained for consideration was new clause 18A, clause 3, title, and clause 1. Honourable members, as indicated in the notice paper, the member for Homa Bay Town, the Honourable Peter Kaluma, has indicated intention to move a recommendo of new clause 13A. Further, the member for Kandui, the Honourable Wafula Munyinyi, proposes amendments to clauses 8 and 9. Honourable members, you will also recall that before we proceeded on recess, and directed that any members proposing amendments to the bill should appear before the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning in line with Standing Order 131. I'm informed that no member appeared before the committee regarding the same matter. I have since received information, however, to the effect that the member for Homa Bay Town, the Honourable Peter Kaluma, no longer intends to move the House to reconsider the new clause 13A. In this regard, therefore, the intended recommendo, as indicated in the notice paper, will not be proceeded with. Number 5, on the other hand, the member for Kandui has proposed amendments to clauses 8 and 9. And in a nutshell, the amendments seek to remove the requirement for payments of interest on gratuity where a member of parliament who elects to buy back into the pension scheme. Further, the amendments also propose that in calculating pension, the reckoning of service for a member of parliament be the aggregate period served, regardless of any interruptions thereto. I only hope that some members will understand what that means. Looking in the House, the Honourable Wafula Munyinyi could be an expert, and the Honourable Mauka Maore. I don't see any other person. Maybe the Honourable Jimmy Angwenyi would have been of use also. Oh, the Honourable Kioni, yes. The Honourable Kioni, yes. Yes. You would understand that that issue, the issue of buyback, and the period of reckoning, if you interrupt, that is, if your employers decide to interrupt you a bit, and then you come back, that's what this is addressing. Number 6, honourable members, you may agree with me that the said amendments by the member for Kandui have money bill aspects as defined under Article 114 of the Constitution, as well will have direct implication on the budget of the said pensions and confer a benefit which has monetary implications. In this regard, and in keeping with the provisions of Article 114, Clause 2 of the Constitution, which provides that, and I quote, the House may proceed only in accordance with the recommendation of the relevant committee after taking into account the views of the Cabinet Secretary for Finance, close the quote. I have not received any information, any communication as to whether the Cabinet Secretary for Finance has been contacted with regard to the proposed amendments by the member for Kandui constituency, the Honorable Munyinyi. I therefore regret that I will not permit the proposed amendments to be considered by the House in the absence of a proper recommendation as envisioned in the Constitution. In conclusion, therefore, the amendments proposed by the member for Kandui to the Parliamentary Pensions Amendment Number 3 Bill 2019, as contained in today's order paper, will not be proceeded with in Committee of the Whole House. Honourable members, I now order that the Committee of the Whole House do proceed in accordance with the guidance herein above. I thank you.
Next order. Order number 8, Committee of the Whole House.
Order, members. Order. Order, Honorable Kajwang. Order, members. We are now in Committee of the Whole House to consider the Parliamentary Pensions Amendment Number 3, Bill, National Assembly Bill Number 57 of 2019. Order, members.
New clause 18.
I now call upon the mover. Honorable Wanga.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I beg to move that new clause 18 be now read a second time. Honorable Chair, this clause is speaking to giving power to the Parliamentary Service Commission to prepare regulations for management of our pension. So it says the Commission may make regulations prescribing anything required by this Act to be prescribed and generally for the better carrying out of the purposes of this Act. And mainly, administration of pension, gratuity, and other benefits of members of Parliament, and establishment of regulation and supervision of the management of a post-retirement medical scheme for members. Remember, we are moving the pension management for members from Treasury to come under the purview of the Parliamentary Service Commission. So this is just giving them power to prepare regulations to manage the same. I thank you, Honorable Chair. I beg to move.
I propose the question, which is that new clause 18 be now read a second time. I go on to put the question, which is that new clause 18 be now read a second time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I go on to propose the question, which is that new clause 18 be part of the bill. Should I proceed to put the question? I go on to put the question, which is that new clause 18 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 3.
I propose the question, which is that clause 3 be part of the bill. Mover?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Although I'm not the mover of this bill, I'm just moving amendments on behalf of the committee. The mover is Honorable Mwadime, who is the chair of the Pensions Committee.
But you're the mover of the amendment?
Yes, of the amendment. Thank you, Honorable Chair. I beg to move that clause 3 be amended as per the order paper. And this is inserting the meaning of commission as used in the bill to mean the parliamentary, to mean the meaning assigned to it under the Parliamentary Service Act, which is really the Parliamentary Service Commission. I beg to move, Honorable Chair.
I propose the question, which is that clause 3 be amended as proposed. I go on to put the question, which is that clause 3 be amended as proposed. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I go on to put the question, which is that clause 3 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Title.
I propose the question, which is that the title be part of the bill. I go on to put the question, which is that the title be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 1.
I propose the question, which is that clause 1 be part of the bill. And I go on to put the question, which is that clause 1 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Members, we've concluded the Committee of the Whole House, and I now call upon the mover to move reporting. Member for Funyula.
Honorable Chair, I beg to move that the committee do report to the House its consideration of the Parliamentary Pensions Amendment number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 57 of 2019, and its approval thereof with amendments.
Honorable members, I go on to put the question, which is that the committee do report to the House its consideration of the Parliamentary Pensions Amendment number 3, Bill, National Assembly Bill number 57 of 2019, and its approval thereof with amendments. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Honorable members, Mr. Speaker.
Chair.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to report that the Committee of the Whole House has considered the Parliamentary Pensions Amendment number 3, Bill, National Assembly Bill number 57 of 2019, and approved the same with amendments.
Mover.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. I also request Honorable Dr. Christine Mbaka, MP Siaya County, to second the motion of agreement with the report of the committee of the whole House.
Honorable Dr. Christine Ombaka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to second. Thank you.
Honorable members, I then propose the question, which is that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. Honorable members, I would have been glad to do that, of course, the Honorable Sankok, but I'm constrained not to do that because I need to confirm that we have the requisite quorum. So I will direct that that very necessary step be undertaken when we are appropriately quorated. So I'll direct that we move on to the next business.
Order number 9, the Waqf Bill, National Assembly Bill number 73 of 2019, second reading, resumption of debate.
TJ, the Honorable TJ, you are on the floor when this was adjourned. You have your time. You can continue.
Although I hadn't begun, so my clock should read 00.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak to this. Yesterday, we had a lengthy discussions on it, and I appreciate the members who spoke both from their hearts and from a point of law and facts. Sometimes, one of the things that we see as leaders of committees is that we prepare so very well, but when we come to the plenary, the majority leader or the majority chief whip leads the discussion, and so we do not get as much time as we should to be able to explain to members where we are. But however, I said that today, on behalf of the committee, we will set a few things so that we allow this bill to mature to a third reading. Mr. Speaker, this is a very good bill in respect of the people that it is concerned, the WAF bill. You know, as I do, if you are a student in those days, you wouldn't get your trust aggregates in the Faculty of Law if you did not attempt a question on waqf, because very few people could even pronounce what waqf is all about. And so it was only for the studious students that were able to understand what waqf was all about. But imagine that this is amending or completely repealing sections of WAF Act, which was an act of 30 of 1951, which came by virtue of Legal Notice 142 of 1963 with an effective date of 1951. Let me just show you how ridiculous this colonial law was and why the members of the Islamic faith has really had to bear with a very old colonial and retrogressive bill. The definition, for example, of what a waqf was in the legislation that we intended to repeal reads as follows. A Muslim, Mr. Speaker, a Muslim is described as an Arab, a member of 12 tribes, a Baluchi, a Somali, or a Komoro Islander, a Malagasy, or a native of Africa of the Muslim faith. Imagine this is the legislation that still is existing, describing members of the Islamic faith. How ridiculous and how retrogressive Muslims must be feeling to deal with such legislations that are unrepealed. And in this legislation, at that time, it only would apply to areas that, that the provincial commissioners would gazette. You know, meaning that in the coastal strip, because of application of the Sultan Protectorate, certain laws did not pass beyond Mombasa into the hinterland. But Muslims are all over. There are Muslims in Gandia. There are Muslims in Kindu. There are Muslims in Kisumu. And in Rewa. In fact, people have changed names there. People who are called Jojo Onyango nowadays are called Abdullahi Akbar Onyango. so that if you only limit application of legislation to a particular region, you miss a people that should benefit from the legislation. Now, one of the things that was discussed yesterday was what I had a member call constitutionality of this bill. But I think we should have waited for more direction to understand where we are. There is nothing unconstitutional in this bill. The member may have misconceived what you and I know as sources of law. And you know, sources of law is predicated in Judicature Act. And if I just would want to bring you up to speed, especially Section 3, Subsection 2, jurisdictions of the courts will be governed by the Constitution and received legislation, that is the common law legislation and case law, as at the reception date. And of course, doctrines of equity and so on. But in subsection 2, the courts will be guided in cases in which one or more of them are affected by it. Personal law, I think the word here is African customary law. So the Islamic law is applicable in Kenya by dint of African customary law of the persons that they relate when one or two people are affected by it. Once somebody professes a particular regime of law, whether it is native law
or to the extent that it is personal law, that law would therefore be a law that is applicable under our Constitution and under the law. The only thing which I thought came out very strongly that the committee will be looking at is that this law must be applicable and not repugnant to justice and morality, or inconsistent with any written law, and shall decide all cases according to substantial justice. It means, therefore, that not just for the Muslims, but for everybody else, we would want to investigate if that law is consistent with the written law and the Constitution, but especially that it is not repugnant to moral justice. So, that being the case, members then understand that there is no unconstitutionality in this law. However, as I heard member for Suba North, for example, say that what is this law which should just be applicable to a certain group of people and not applicable to others? She says, if a WAF is set, then the benefits of that WAF should be applicable to everybody regardless of religious persuasion or doctrinal issues. But look, that is why it is personal law. People choose the regime under which they want. There are people who have professed Christianity. There are people who have professed African customary law to guide their personal law. And so, if certain persons have professed Islamic law, just the fact that this law, therefore, benefits such a group of people does not make it unconstitutional. And it would not be argued, it cannot be rightly argued, that people from some other persuasions would want to benefit from a law for which it is not a personal law to it. And so I think sometimes we have extended passion to judge our constitutionality when we decide these things. I mean, if you are not a member of the Islamic faith, so why do you want to benefit from it? Because the sadaqah or the waqf comes from the Muslim people. It is decided by the Islamic law. So you want them to donate, you want them to give, and then you want to take a benefit from it when you can also not donate to the same kitty. It doesn't make sense. So in that case, you therefore, because I think yesterday there was suggestion that it was a discriminative law, which tries to alienate society. And so I think I have shown, and we will clearly show in the report, that per se it is not unconstitutional. The question would be, of course, if WAF, if the trustees of the WAF decides to benefit a community that is not generally Islamic, that is what has not come out here, which should come out well, because that, again, can happen here, and it is not unconstitutional. For example, the commissioners can decide to build a school in an area which is predominantly Christian. That should happen, and that is not unconstitutional, and that is perceived, especially if they are poor people and if they relate to the basic principles which are here. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, I know I think I must have prepared too many things to say, so I need to say them quickly. Section 4 would really need to be looked at in terms of validity of a WAF. And it is this Section 4 that is talking about applicability of the law and the sources of law, and especially the fact that there need to be a very clear sentence that it does not matter, notwithstanding the fact that somebody does not profess that faith, a WAF can be given in favor of that person. Because a poor person, a poor young man in Luanda, is just as poor as the other in Vanga. And it does not matter the personal law that he professes. The denominator, or actually the religion that he professes, is poverty. And so all these people should be looked at. Now, if you look at Articles, clause 4 of the bill, it says that there will be a selection panel by this selection panel, what I found, which I think we will be discussing in the committee, that it shall invite views from Muslims in respect of shortlisted candidates. But who are these Muslims? Legislation cannot just say it will invite Muslims. It must show the type of, or the cadre, or the criteria of the people they call Muslims who will be invited as selection panel. Now, there is a need to understand the public trustee. There are a group of 4 legislations that are relevant to this. First, Trustees Perpetual Successions Act, Trustees Act, Public Trustee. Because you see, this is in the nature of trust law as regards people professing Islamic law. And so the committee would want to understand if the various sections of the Trustees Act have been complied with. Because these are, whether you are Islam or Christian or African traditionalist, the Trustees Act and Public Trustees Act are applicable to everybody, including the WAF. And so we would want to understand to what extent has this been discussed, and to what extent is it consistent with the written law which is there. I have an interest, there is an interest proposition here that you see the Attorney General becomes the chair of the WAF Commission, and of course with 8 other members. But if you go to the financial reporting, I thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, before you came, I had an attacking from the speaker that has just left that you would not mind giving me just a little more minutes to explain what I must explain, because I think it is important. Yes. So if you go to the auditing sections, it says that the Commission shall prepare a report and submit it to the Attorney General. I think that must have been a mistake. I think they must have met Auditor General, because this is auditing.
Honorable Calderon, how much time do you need?
I'll be over with this in the next 5 minutes. I will. 5 minutes maximum.
5 is a lot.
Well, but you know, members, you will be saying this. Some of us have taken time to research to be able to.
Let me give you 3 minutes.
All right. Now you see, yeah, because you know he's speaking, but he has already spoken. So, and then he's now directing me on how long I should take. Yourself. Now, I think this is a mistake. It should have been the Auditor General, because this clause 27 is now the clause by which there is auditing. And so I think this report should properly go to the Auditor General. After all, the Attorney General is already the chair of the Commission. So how would then the Attorney General prepare a report to himself? It does not make a lot of sense. And then the last one has to do with rules and regulations. I think Article 29 needs to be expanded properly so that the Attorney General does not only make the rules, but also regulations, because this is an endowment fund which will need some regulations to be able to carry it through, which may not be captured necessarily in the Act. And so that should come out, but even if it comes out, there should be the extent of that regulation, because it will interfere with rights, or it would affect rights of the people that are affected by the WAF. Madam Speaker, we have agreed that my committee is processing this bill, and members should not worry. At the appropriate time when we go to the 3rd reading, we will have a report suggesting specific amendments that we should have, and we will discuss this with the people that are all concerned. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, if you've already spoken to the motion, you could take out your name from the, or pull out your card so that you don't cause confusion, because you can't speak twice to the same matter. Let's have the Honorable Koske. Point of order? You're on a point of order?
Honorable Speaker, I'm standing under order number 95, standing order number 95. I beg that you call the mover to reply, since yesterday we discussed on the same motion for over 3 hours. And I'm looking at the next order is also very important, and we might require more time to deliberate on it.
Honorable members, you know, my hands are tied. Once a member moves that motion, I have to throw it back to the House to decide. And Honorable Rachel, you know that. So I'll go on to prosecute the motion. Honorable members, the Honorable Koske has moved a motion for the mover to be called upon to reply. I now go ahead to put the question, which is that the mover be called upon to reply. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? Nay. The ayes have it. The mover?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I really want to thank my colleagues for the very good information they gave and volunteered to give it to the House. And Honorable Speaker, I wish also to comment the Honorable T.J. Kajwang, who is the Vice Chair for the Committee on Justice, Legal and Justice Affairs, that he has undertaken, Honorable Speaker, to give us more information, especially that coming from the public in terms of public participation. And before we go for the Committee of the whole House. Honorable Speaker, whereas my colleagues are asking me to donate, but my hands are tied with respect to the standing orders, now that I'm replying upon the standing order 95. My colleagues, my hands will be tied on that aspect. I just want to thank you and thank all my colleagues. We have taken note and we have undertaken to print down the Hansard so that all the comments and views that members put down, we will have to make sure we include them into the next stage. I want to thank you, honorable colleagues, and I beg to reply. Thank you.
Okay, Honorable Wangwe, thank you. We will defer the putting of the question until when we are properly constituted. Next order. Yes, Honorable Kajwang.
Yes. Madam Speaker, I just beg your indulgence before you step to the next order. I'm requesting if in your discretion you can re-alter the order paper. There is a matter which is last on your order paper, the Judicial Service Commission Amendment Bill. As I speak as the Vice Chair of the JLAC, I have written a letter to the Speaker, and I've shared a copy with the Majority Whip, intention to withdraw the bill, withdraw it completely. And I'm requesting that we may want to deal with it and I withdraw it rather than to wait until the last order is called for convenience of the House. Madam Speaker.
Honorable Kajwang, I think that's well in order. Just a bit of consultation. Honorable Kajwang, I will give you an opportunity to speak to the issue of withdrawing the bill at this point in time. So I therefore reorganize the order paper and have us look at order number 15.
Order number 15, the Judicial Service Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 33 of 2020, second reading.
Honorable Kajwang.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we, on behalf of the JLAC committee, we wish to withdraw this bill. The justification or the reasons for which we do this has been explained in a letter to the Speaker, which has been copied to the Majority Whip, and so they are aware what is happening. The reasoning here is that this bill seeks to amend Section 30, subsection 3 of the Commissions Act. Now, Section 30, briefly, there was a High Court case, the Law Society of Kenya versus Attorney General and another, 2016 Kenya Law Reports, which the court expressed itself and struck down that section of law as unconstitutional. It is this section that this bill is trying to amend. Now, when the court has expressed itself exercising correct jurisdiction, that section of law is now not there at all for amendment. This is the thinking. That having been done, of course, it came after this bill had been published. That having been done, there is no section of law to amend. To that extent, therefore, the bill which seeks to amend what is not there is not only illegal, but is unconstitutional. We have expressed our legal piece in that long letter, and we have explained how that arose. We have even annexed a copy of that judgment to that the piece. And so, in view of this view that is concurred upon by the members of the committee, I wish to apply to withdraw the bill. I have done that because I have seen before chairmen of committees coming to withdraw bills or to withdraw sections of law. And I have been very critical that you cannot do that either without concurrence of the committee or without explaining to the plenary exactly the reasons for which you withdraw a bill. So that I have seen chairmen of committees taking advantage of their personal views of what they think should be withdrawn or not withdrawn. In this sense, we have decided to give a justification, a legal justification, and it has been concurred with by members of the committee for this withdrawal. So, Madam Speaker, acting, of course there is no report, but as we said the other day, that whether or not there is a report, the standing orders allows a bill to proceed for second reading, notwithstanding that there is no report. So in that view, we ask that you may order that this bill stands withdrawn in whole. Thank you.
Very well, Honorable Kajwang. In my listening to you, you say that this is a deliberation of the entire Committee of Justice and Legal Affairs? Yes. In that case, then, honorable members, the bill stands withdrawn and accordingly expunged from the order paper. So let's go to the next order.
Order number 10, the National Hospital Insurance Fund Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 21 of 2021, second reading.
Majority Whip.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the National Hospital Insurance Fund Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 21 of 2021, be read the second time. Honorable Speaker, this bill seeks to amend the NHIF Act of 1998 to establish the National Health Scheme and to enhance the mandate and capacity of the National Hospital Insurance Fund to facilitate and deliver universal health coverage, UHC. According to the World Health Organization, Honorable Speaker, coverage means that universal health coverage, Honorable Speaker, means that individuals and communities receive the health services they need without suffering, inability due to financial hardship. Honorable Speaker, as members will appreciate, the overriding goal of the Universal Health Coverage Program is to provide health care for all without discrimination based on financial ability or other factors. Honorable Speaker, one of the most important ways to achieve this is through a seamless national health insurance plan, everybody regardless of their financial ability. In this regard, therefore, the proposals in this bill, Honorable Speaker, are aimed at making the National Hospital Insurance Fund become a national health insurance scheme that is mandatory to all Kenyans. The target is eventually cover at least 5 million poor households, but as a start, the government has committed to start this year with covering 1 million poor households. Honorable Speaker, to expand National Hospital Insurance Fund's mandate to offer the universal health coverage, this bill seeks to increase the revenue raised through NHIF in three main ways. Honorable Speaker, this bill seeks, one, to make NHIF mandatory for all, whether salaried or employed. Currently, the informal sector, which contributes 83% of the Kenya workforce, has remained voluntary. Honorable Speaker, number two, the bill requires employers to make standard and matching contributions in respect to their employees, National Hospital Insurance Fund contributions to improve NHIF's financial sustainability as well as its redistributive potential. Honorable Speaker, on this point where matching is going to apply, there is still a debate. As we are aware, the committee is yet to file the report, but we are going to look at the report from the committee, Honorable Speaker, which is looking at two aspects of matching. Is either going to call it as matching, Honorable Speaker, or top-up, where matching, Honorable Speaker, means if one member contributes 400, the employer will also contribute 400. But where there will be a top-up, Honorable Speaker, if an employer, the payable amount, for instance, if it's 500, and we are going to approve maybe the top-up, it will mean if the employee contributes 150, the difference shall be met by the employer. Honorable Speaker, number three, for co-insured patients or patients with a private insurance facility and the National Hospital Insurance Fund, the bill provides that the healthcare providers will be required to bill the private insurer first before billing the NHIF, but the NHIF will continue to cover the daily rebate for inpatients. Honorable Speaker, many a time we have not withdrawn the support from the private health providers by virtue of upgrading the scheme. It will still apply. The private health providers will still continue. Honorable Speaker, to sanction compliance with payment deadlines, this bill in section 13 seeks to amend the Act to rationalize the penalty for late payments of the standard or matching contributions. The Act provides for a penalty of five times the amount contribution. But in this bill, Honorable Speaker, to sanction a penalty of 25% of the contribution. Honorable Speaker, in the current bill, when you have defaulted to pay, should you say you are supposed to pay 500 shillings, and you default, in the current bill, you pay 500 times 5. That's 2,500. But in this bill, Honorable Speaker, we see that it is proposing that you will now pay 25% as a penalty of the sum amount which you are supposed to pay when you are, before you defaulted, Honorable Speaker. Additionally, in the event an employer fails to remit the required standard and matching contribution, which makes an employee incur some costs while seeking treatment, the bill makes provision for the employer to compensate the employee the costs incurred when seeking treatment. Honorable Speaker, what has been happening with employers is most of them would want to deduct NHIF, but they fail to remit. But now what happens? At the time when you go to the hospital, you present your NHIF card, that's the time, Honorable Speaker, you realize that you are not compliant. Yet the employee was deducted the money. So what happens is the employee gets money from his or her pocket to pay the bills. Now the amendment which is being proposed in this bill, Madam Speaker, is that if that employee has suffered because of the negligence of the employer, let the employee now have recourse to recover the money to be compensated by the employer to that extent, Madam Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the bill enhances the penalty for those individuals who obtain benefits through false or fraudulent claims, be subjected to a fine of 10 million shillings or imprisonment, duration of 5 years, and deregistration of healthcare institutions found participating in fraudulent activities. Honorable Speaker, most of the service providers, we have seen a scenario where there is false presentation of claims to the NHIF organization. So what we are saying is, if you are a service provider who has been paneled as being eligible to provide service, and you fraudulently produce those, present false documents for payment, Honorable Speaker, we are proposing this bill that you'll have to pay a fine of 10 million shillings or face an imprisonment of 5 years, and also, without an option, you will be deregistered of your healthcare services, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this will help to deter the way aggressiveness of fraudulent healthcare providers. Honorable Speaker, in a study conducted by Oxfam, it was observed that universal health coverage is not a one-size-fits-all journey. Governments need to develop approaches that fit the social, economic, and political contexts of their individual countries. In addition, the World Health Organization has been explicit that countries should prioritize 4 key actions to finance universal health coverage. Honorable Speaker, one of it is to reduce direct payments at the healthcare facilities. So that, Madam Speaker, medical ill health, Madam Speaker, is a form of, you can only prepare for it, because at the time when it comes, you cannot know when you're going to fall sick. So you cannot really wait that you'll keep money, and money will be available when illness comes. That is why, Honorable Speaker, we discourage and say we don't want to have money at that time, but prepare for it, Madam Speaker, so that reduce that type of direct payment. But you've already taken arrangements by being part of a scheme which is now safeguarding you in terms of your health. Madam Speaker, number 2, maximize mandatory prepayment. This is now by virtue or through the organizations or by the government, so that the government mobilizes a particular organization like NHIF, which now sets up a maximum mandatory prepayment procedures to cover the scheme. Honorable Speaker, to establish, through establishment of large risk pools, which is like the pool like the NHIF, which is going to pool all the resources from both the voluntary, now we made it mandatory through this bill, it will pool. And when you look at the base, how it's going to widen, it's a big base that's going to have a very big pool to collect the money and also manage the medical risk. And finally, use general government revenue to cover those who cannot afford to contribute. Honorable Speaker, in the bill, there is the clause on indigents, which will now address the issue of those who are not able to meet the contributions. The government, how the government's approaching on those ones, how is it going to accumulate, put them together, and manage their contributions, Madam Speaker. Honorable Speaker, those 4 actions are the sole objective of the various health-related laws including this bill. The NHIF bill intends to reduce direct payments at the healthcare facilities, make mandatory the insurance premium payments, and most importantly, require the government to use its own revenue to make contributions for the indigent. This bill intends to amend Section 15 of the NHIF Act by inserting Section 1B, which shall make the national government liable as a contributor to the fund on behalf of the vulnerable, who shall be identified by a relevant government body. Honorable Speaker, this bill should not be misunderstood as an afflict to the private sector insurance market. It does not prohibit taking out insurance premiums from the private sector providers. Additionally, the bill does not prevent persons of means from having enhanced insurance premiums. In fact, the bill proposes to amend Section 15D of the Act by inserting Section 3A to allow individuals to make additional voluntary contribution to enhance benefits. Madam Speaker, there has been conflicting views out there being said like this bill is now going to stop on the way and block the private market players. It's not. In fact, it's going to enhance, such that enhance and streamline the environment where both private and the public like NHIF are going to play. Honorable Speaker, the bill also makes provisions for the empanelment of healthcare providers to avoid quacks and substandard healthcare services to Kenyans. In this regard, the bill empowers the NHIF board in consultation with the relevant accredited bodies to publish in the Gazette the list of empaneled health providers. Honorable Speaker, it is important that we have a list of those service providers, healthcare service providers, who qualify. Not only just the list to have it, but also to monitor that list and make sure those who are in that list are complying with the laid down rules, they are to the right standard, they are not fraudulently collecting money from the people, and even when the services they are offering to the people, Madam Speaker, is up to standard. Honorable Speaker, the overarching motivation for this bill is to tailor and support the National Hospital Insurance Fund to cater for the financing component as far as the access to health care by Kenyans is concerned. I am reliably informed the Health Committee was receiving input from several stakeholders, including the CEO of NHIF, and I hope once the committee is ready with the report, we'll benefit from further insights made by the industry players. Honorable Speaker, it's important to note that as per your own ruling, we couldn't wait because we are on the move to achieve the universal health coverage. We must, as a country, we must also join the well-developed countries to make sure we provide universal health coverage to our people. And that is why we said we'll go, as per your ruling, go into the second reading as we await the Committee on Health report to be tabled in the House. Madam Speaker, I had a sitting with the chair, and the chair was very comfortable that we proceed. Since most of the issues have been resolved, it's just waiting the preparation of the document, the report, and they'll bring it on the floor as early as tomorrow, unless something else happens. With those very many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move and ask the Honorable Owino, the Great, to second. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Owino.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, let me thank the Chief Whip for that eloquent moving of this important bill rather. Madam Speaker, on behalf of my chair, Sabina Chege, because I'm a member of the Health Committee, I'm happy to represent her in seconding this bill, National Hospital Insurance Bill Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 2021. Madam Speaker, health is very important, and for any government that wants productivity, it is a must that it should be addressed squarely and effectively. And on that note, we want to thank the President for putting health as one of the big agenda. Madam Speaker, universal health coverage is the engine, is the vehicle that will drive people to good health. And the National Hospital Insurance Fund is the engine that will drive this.
So the bill, which is now before us as amendment, will first of all change the title of National Hospital to National Health, because National Hospital was addressing tertiary care of patients, meaning unless you're level 5, level 6, it was not very effective. But now we have brought in health so that dispensaries, health centers can also be covered in this insurance scheme. It is also important to note that we tried the inputs in health for UHC, supplying commodities that people can go and get drugs and all that. That did not work in the pilot phase of this study. So we have resorted to output, meaning we want to have a national insurance scheme where you can be paid to if you are indigent, as said by the, or employer can deduct and pay, or those who are working can also chip into it, into kind of a pool, the way insurance works. So you just go to the facilities for care and no direct payment of any kind. So, Madam Speaker, this amendment bill first addresses that. So we will have National Health Insurance Fund as the title, and that those recommendations or amendments will come at the committee of the whole stage, of the whole House. Number two, Madam Speaker, this amendment bill will give mandate to the National Health Insurance Fund to facilitate the payment of health services in all the facilities without nationals struggling to get where to pay and all that. They will just go for services. And we anticipate, and we made it very clear to the team from the National Health Insurance Fund that once it's cushioned with this bill, then access to healthcare services should not just be access, but it should also be accompanied by quality of services. Madam Speaker, we also had a problem with the billing, because when patients had sought care from facilities, the first bill was going to National National Health Insurance Fund. They were billed first, so they were taking a bigger slack more than the private. So this amendment bill will ensure that the first bill goes to the private insurance, and then other bills, which is now very good enough for these schemes because they can take care of diagnostic services as well as the chemos. So they will take the second bill. That will save some money for us to spread it on a long-term care for patients in those categories. Previously, as you know, Madam Speaker, that this insurance scheme has been around for the last 55 years. There have been a lot of fraud or fraudulent activities which this amendment bill is trying to prevent. Number one is the use of stamps. People use even to make their own stamps. So this amendment bill will take out that. There will be no use of stamps anymore, and also the means of identification. We are moving to biometric so that we have everybody in the system. But should there be any act of fraudulence, we have jacked up the penalties, 10 million or 5 years in jail. I think if we protect, or if this is enforced candidly, then we can protect the fund, and therefore the sustainability of this fund can be assured. Also, the issue of penalties. This has been a pain. If you delay to pay, or employers delay, there was nothing done, As the mover put it rightly, we have reduced the penalty. It used to be 5 times. Now we have said you can pay 25% of what you owe. If done well, if members pass these amendments, there will be a lot of gain for this country. Because what happens now, Madam Speaker, is that people are not able to pay for healthcare services. And that has impacted negatively on how people value their health. And what that has done is that we have the delays in accessing healthcare services. And when there's a delay, then it invites progression. So disease progresses because you have not gone to the hospital because you fear you cannot pay. So when they show up in level 5, 6, the tertiary care, they show up with complications. For example, if somebody is suffering from diabetes and they don't know, and they don't want to go to a facility because they don't have how to pay or co-pay, that diabetes can progress and damage organs, so you end up with renal failure. And now you will have to need dialysis, which will take you away from your family or cut your production. So what this is doing now, it is going to make it easy for people to get to a facility, even for preventive and promotive care. That's why we removed the hospital to make it a health insurance fund. That may make our productivity in this country more valuable because people will have diseases detected early and managed early because they can access services. And the driver, as I said, the engine to make sure that people can access is the National Hospital Insurance Fund. That is how important it is. As a committee, even today, Madam Speaker, we talked about how contributions can be made to this fund to make it more sustainable. And we have made some changes, especially in the matching, employers matching what they deduct from the employee to the fund. And I think that will come at the committee of the whole House. But what we are basically saying is that let's start with the public entities, government agencies, match the fund. Because what happens in the insurance is that when somebody is sick, may be sick intensively, and somebody is well enough to continue paying for this person to be taken care of. Lastly, Madam Speaker, I must report that we had a lot and extensive public participation in this bill. The workers, the Ministry of Health, the industries, everybody came and they gave their input. And lastly, what we will bring as amendment on the floor at the committee of the whole House will edify this. But as it is, if done, healthcare in this country will be more amenable to people than it is now. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask members to support this bill. Thank you.
You need to second, Honorable Owino.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Other members? Honorable members, I go on to propose a question, which is of the National Hospital Insurance Fund Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 21 of 2021, be now read a second time. Let's start with the Honorable David Sankok.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise.
Honorable Sankok, you seem to be speaking in tongues or something. I think you're spending a lot of time with the cows, Honorable Sankok, that when you come to Parliament, you forget the parliamentary languages, which is Kiswahili and English. You know, so that's just a reminder.
Forgive me, Honorable Speaker. I just thank you in my mother tongue, Kimasai, so for giving me this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this bill, and I want to congratulate the Committee of Health, together with the mover, that is Honorable Wangwe, our majority whip, Honorable Speaker, for this very important bill, Honorable Speaker, the National Hospital Insurance Fund Amendment Bill 2021. Honorable Speaker, in Kenya, Kenyan millionaires and even billionaires are one disease away from poverty. This one is true, Honorable Speaker, because you may be rich today, but after an attack of COVID-19 or cancer, whether you are dying or not, you leave your family in poverty because of the exorbitant prices that is being charged in our hospitals. Honorable Speaker, many Kenyans who may be suffering from terminal illnesses are entering the stages that we may not be able to handle these diseases because health fees and health bills are prohibitive. Honorable Speaker, even treatable diseases, very minor diseases that will have been treated with just a dose of maybe antibiotic or antiprotozoa, Honorable Speaker, you find becoming untreatable. Why? Because the bills are just too scary. Sometimes when they go to hospital, even a disease like a symbol like gonorrhea, for instance, Honorable Speaker, you are supposed to be given antibiotic for probably 3 days or 5 days. But because of the price, you only take for 1 day or 2 days. You find those bacteria developing resistance. These are the things that we encounter when we really don't have an elaborate insurance system for our citizens, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, National Hospital Insurance Fund is the only route to universal health care. The provision of machineries, the employment of manpower, Honorable Speaker, will not solve if we don't have the National Insurance Fund being there in place and being regulated properly. Honorable Speaker, for the sake of the hustler nation, let us make the National Insurance Fund contribution in terms of percentage. And in some articles in this bill, I've seen that there are people who will be exempted, and there will be others that will be paying in terms of their income, especially those who are self-employed and from the private sector. Honorable Speaker, I will suggest in the committee of the whole House that let's just make it a percentage of your earning, so that if you are a member of parliament earning 800,000 Kenya shillings, then you pay, whether it is 1% or 2% of that salary, which may translate, if it is 2%, to 16,000 Kenya shillings. Rather than having all of us paying 500 shillings, including that person who earns the lowest salary of 7,500. You know, when you are earning 7,500 and you pay 500, you are paying almost 30% of your salary. Yet, a member of parliament who is paying 500 is paying 0.0001% of the salary. It is not an equalizer. So for the sake of the hustlers who are still on the bottom of the ladder, hustling their way to be billionaires in this country, hustling their way through the economic ladder, let us charge in terms of percentage. And I will be bringing this amendment in the committee of the whole House. Honorable Speaker, the National Hospital Insurance Fund should also be there to protect the very vulnerable members of our society. For instance, why should persons with disability surely pay for an insurance fund. We should easily exempt, and I think I'll bring amendment in the committee of the whole house, so that we exempt persons with disability from paying. Instead, because they are registered and the government have their data, the government will be paying for them the insurance, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, even those on cash transfer, Honorable Speaker, we cannot be saying that these people are vulnerable. We are giving them 2,000 Kenya shillings per month, and then again expect those people to pay for insurance or to pay for hospital bills. Surely the government should give them 2,000 Kenya shillings per month and pay for 500 Kenya shillings for NHIF. In any case, you can even deduct the 500 and give them 1,500 so that at least they are safe, because health is more important than clothing and shelter and food, Honorable Speaker. If they die, they will not even eat the money you are giving them. So let us have an arrangement in which either we top up to be 2,500 cash transfer, so that 500 is for National Insurance Fund, or we deduct, because I am sure they will not complain. Honorable Speaker, the bill also seeks to seal loopholes of corruption, both from the hospital side, whereby some hospitals are overcharging, Honorable Speaker, and even having bills of patients who did not come to the hospital. There is cartels, Honorable Speaker, in the private sector, in private hospitals, who now go solicit anybody with a NHIF card so that they can take this NHIF card, sweep the NHIF card, charge a certain bill, and probably pay some little money, charge, let's say, 20,000, and pay the owner of the NHIF card 1,000 Kenya shillings. And since Kenya, with the poverty level, everybody is willing to accept. Honorable Speaker, it also sealed the loopholes from even the holders of NHIF cards, Honorable Speaker, the clients themselves. Because you find that the clients back there home, they will be saying, who have the NHIF card so that I can use when I go to hospital. So they go and use. So one card is used by 10 members of the society around that area. Anybody who is getting sick, they already know who have an NHIF card. And sometimes even they buy, because they tell them, according to what I'm analyzing, my sickness is quite high. They may charge me closer to 10,000. So let me give you 2,000 so that I can use your card. Honorable Speaker, it will also seal loopholes from that area. Honorable Speaker, it also seal loopholes of corruption from inspectors. In Article 36, Article 30, sub-article 6, it says that there is a penalty for those inspectors who will go and inspect the hospital, find that there is problem with that hospital, find that there is a corruption in that hospital, but because also they have asked for some kickbacks, they'll come and give wrong information. So, Honorable Speaker, I do really support this bill, and I think it is upon this House to try and hurry up with this bill so that we can attain universal health care and we can cushion our citizens, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, diseases like cancer are detected very late, when they are in stage 4, when they are no longer treatable. Why? Because somebody feared to go to the hospital because they know how much they will be charged. They were probably looking for money. Some of them have already been diagnosed that you have stage 1 cancer, which is treatable. But they will say, let us go home so that we can look for money. And then they will look for that money for the next 3 years. When they come back, they're already in stage 4, not treatable, Honorable Speaker. So for us to be able to protect our citizens, Honorable Speaker, I do support this bill, and I thank you, Honorable Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Don't mind when I thanked you in Kimasai, I'll still say Asholing.
Let's have the Honorable Member for Ugenya. Is he here? No. Member for Funyula?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the bill at hand. That's the National Hospital Insurance Fund Amendment Bill of the National Assembly. Honorable Speaker, probably if there's anything that has got the potential of disorganizing a family, if there is anything that has got the potential of wiping away a family's investment and wealth, is medical. As we say in my community, you never know when you will fall sick. You can decide when to sleep, you can decide when to wake up, but you never know when you will fall sick. And you never know what kind of illness that will befall you. And you never know how much it will cost to treat the illness. And you never know how long it will cost to treat illness. Honorable Speaker, in typical terms, illness is like a risk. And many times, you choose whether to retain the risk or to transfer the risk. Since you do not know the ultimate outcome of a risk, the practice has always been such circumstances, you transfer the risk. That probably is the genesis of medical insurance cover, and that's the genesis probably for the National Hospital Insurance Fund. Honorable Speaker, there are very many good stories out of NHIF in terms of paying medical bills, in terms of providing affordable medical care. Of course, there are other harrowing experiences about NHIF, but probably in respect of this bill, it's important to focus on the positive part of it. Honorable Speaker, looking at the bill as drafted, it seeks to do a few things that hitherto were not in the original bill. Number one is to entrench universal health care that has been a talk all along for many years in this country. Honorable Speaker, we have people in this country who truly cannot afford to subscribe to any medical cover because they have no money, they are retired, they are vulnerable, they are indigent, they have no source of income. Those are the people that, to me, is the most important aspect of this bill, where it compels the government, that's the national government, to basically make arrangements to pay for those people. And more so, those are some of the most important aspects of that bill. Honorable Speaker, yes, the bill provides for there must be equal contribution, both the employer and the employee. I know this is going for many employers, this is going to increase the cost of doing business. This is going to increase the cost of running operations. But nevertheless, for the purpose of the health of this country, there are some sacrifices people, corporates, and all other forms of legal entities must be willing to make to leave this country, this nation, a stronger and health productive nation. Obviously, the bill as drafted, if it goes through, obviously, the typical private medical insurance schemes will start losing customers, will start losing subscribers, because the cost is going to be exorbitant. So they will treat now, therefore, an employer will treat NHIF as an added benefit or as a fringe benefit accorded to an employee. Honorable Speaker, the other important aspect of this bill that seems to come out very clear is to again entrench voluntary contribution. However, we hope the in-principle bill has provisions on what kind of benefits voluntary contribution will entail and how much will it be required for purposes to getting full range of medical cover. Many times, Honorable Speaker, NHIF tends to pay for only bed and probably the hospital room. It does not pay for all services. We do hope now with the increased contribution and the increased cover, it will be in a position to cover all forms of treatment, both outpatient and inpatient. Many cases, Honorable Speaker, the biggest cost actually is outpatient. That's why it's most frequent, especially people living with various types of underlying underlying conditions. Honorable Speaker, however, there is a provision in the bill, that's clause 7, that amends the section 22 of the Principal Act, where it says where a beneficiary has got a private health insurance cover, the private health insurance cover shall be liable for payment up to the limits the beneficiary is covered. Such that now what it's providing for, that in the event you have a double cover, and again it's a matter, guys, professionals in the insurance industry will have to debate, because you can never be covered for the same risk by two underwriters. It provides that in the event you have both NHIF, which seems now a compulsory universal cover, and then you have a private one, in the event of any treatment, you then start with the private one and end up with NHIF. The danger with that is that the private hospitals and the private insurance covers, unless we put mechanisms in place, will collude to quickly deplete that particular cover so that they fall to NHIF, leaving the person, the patient, vulnerable. Because we know quite a number of ailments, most medical conditions, take long term, especially cancer and the rest. Honorable Speaker, with those few remarks, I stand to support, but probably at the time of the Committee of the Whole House, there will be some immediate amendments to be made so that we align it to the realities of modern life and the challenges of the medical cover in this country. With those few remarks, I beg to support.
Member for Chepalungu, Honorable Koske.
Honorable Speaker, this is a very important amendment that this Honorable House is going to consider for amendment. Universal health coverage means that all individuals and communities receive the health services they need without suffering inability due to financial hardships. Honorable Speaker, when you look at the World Health Organization, it provides that universal health coverage program is to provide health care for all without discrimination based on financial ability or factors. It's important to note that this NHIF amendment, currently the informal sector, which constitutes 83% of the Kenya workforce, has remained under voluntary. That means the people who are benefiting under NHIF is about 17%, leaving the entire population of 83% without the ability to join into the scheme. Honorable Speaker, in the event an employer on those who are under formal sector, in the event an employer fails to meet the required standard and matching contribution, which makes an employee incur some cost while seeking treatment, the bill, this amendment bill, makes provision for the employer to compensate the employee the cost incurred when seeking treatment. Honorable Speaker, under the same World Health Organization, it has been explicit that countries should prioritize 4 key actions to finance universal health coverage. And this is by reducing direct payments at the healthcare facilities, maximize mandatory prepayments, establish large risk pools, and use general government revenue to cover those who cannot afford to contribute. Honorable Speaker, this bill also provides, it makes provisions for the empanelment of healthcare providers to avoid quacks and substandard healthcare services to Kenyans. In this regard, the bill empowers the NHIF board in consultation with the relevant accredited bodies to publish in the Gazette the list of empaneled healthcare providers. Honorable Speaker, in the next amendment, I have the same thought as about what this one has already mentioned, that the Insurance Fund Act number 9 of 1998. I would like to introduce a bill to amend the same act, especially number 9 of 1998, which I will be able to clear within some days so that during the next reading, it will be already included. I intend to bring the rates payable under voluntary contribution created under the section 20 of the Act within the ambit of the Act, so that the amount of contribution payable under the voluntary is prescribed under the Act. Honorable Speaker, this will provide that an amount of 300 will be payable under the voluntary contribution each month and grant the National Hospital Insurance Fund power to review the rate after every 5 years with the approval of the National Assembly, and it requires the fund to provide reasons for any proposed review, including the expected impact of the review on access to health care by all Kenyans. And this has a simple justification, Honorable Speaker. The proposed amendment is intended to ensure that many Kenyans, especially persons who are in the informal sector, those not working and indigents, can afford to pay the NHIF contribution by reducing the rate from the current 500 shillings per month to Kenya shillings 300 per month, which translates to about 10 shillings per day. This will facilitate many Kenyans, Honorable Speaker, to have access to health care insurance under the NHIF and therefore more to access health care. Honorable Speaker, when you look at this bill under the Memorandum of Objects and Reasons, Clause 15, we are told that the bill proposes to repeal Section 20 of the Act to remove the voluntary contributions provision, since contributions towards the fund shall be mandatory. For all the people who are under formal sector, it will be automatic to calculate based on the earnings. But those who are not in the formal sector, it is very important that we bring down the cost from 500 shillings to 300 shillings, whereby Chwakali sector people, border operators, mama mboga, kiosk operators, they are able to every day get 10 shillings. So that cumulatively at the end of the month, they are able to pay 300 shillings per month. Honorable Speaker, when you look at the voluntary contributors to the NHIF, it has fallen by 77% since COVID-19 pandemic was reported in March 2020. And it is because of the simple reason that most of the contributors are self-employed in business, in small businesses, which may have collapsed or lost sales